Never mind gender imbalance in the mining and energy sectors. The panelists are Nasim Banu Lari, is the Managing Director of Lucara, Botswana, and the first woman to serve in this capacity for a diamond mining company in the country. She's the youngest female MD in the mining world.
Ndapwilapo Selma Shimutwikini, Managing Director, Rich Africa Consultancy. Selma is a natural resources law and policy expert who advises leaders on strategy, inclusive policies, sustainability, ESG, and trade. She is also a non-executive board member of Namib Desert Diamonds, Namdia. And the moderator is CNBC Africa anchor, Fifi Peters.
So we're talking about mining, and I think I just want to set the context from what's happening in a South African perspective right now. It has been an interesting space in the past 5 years. I think in South Africa right now, we have the most female CEOs ever in our history running mining companies. I am reminded at the top of my head, and I stand to be corrected, in terms of the CEO at Anglo Platinum right now, who's a female, the CEO at Kumba Iron Ore right now in South Africa, who's a female. Woo! The CEO at Exxaro Resources, who's also a female right now, as well as the chair of Anglo American South Africa, who is, clap for her, who is also a female right now. So that's a record 4 in South Africa. And you skirt over to our neighboring country over in Botswana, where you run the show. Yes, as the first Botswana woman to be CEO of a diamond mining company, the youngest woman in the world. Yeah. But I'm confused about that. Square that for me, and whether it is lonely at the top for you right now.
Thank you. I was about to say it's very lonely in Botswana because I'm the only female right now that's running a mining company in Botswana, actually.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and I think mining, I won't call it male-dominated because you allow men to dominate you.
Okay.
So I'll call it male-populated, very male-populated industry, and I think it's changing. I think it's changing, and it is lonely, but the lonely is good. You know, some of the ladies were talking about it earlier on. When you're lonely there at the top, you make great changes.
Sure.
So I am actually going to call myself an activist after all the speakers this morning and in the afternoon as well. So I'm definitely an activist for females, and you'll see that from my team that are here as well.
Sure.
But I think, yeah, it's those ladies that are making a lot of noise because I make a lot of noise too, right? But I think what's important to note that is, you know, in this male-populated environment, it's still there. There's a lot to change. There's a lot that needs to come, and that's why when I see the young ladies on the podium today, it's so refreshing to see that change is coming, and it's coming fast.
All right.
So
all right.
Watch out, ladies.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It is coming, and it's happening. And I think I was quite inspired by the over 50 panel.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Those phenomenal ladies, and how, for me, their message was how you hold firm the ladder that allowed you to rise so that you can now allow others to climb up with you. Some are working in mining also and other related energy sectors. You also sit on several boards, and you just told me right now that you were the first female to bring the International Energy Conference to Namibia, so a whole lot of firsts. Give her a shout out. So in your role as a consultant, you talk to a whole lot of people, and I want to know who's at that table and what they say when you talk about issues like ESG and sustainability and inclusivity, and specifically inclusivity as it does pertain to gender mainstreaming in policy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very important to define those terms, because I think depending on the region of the world, the definition is different. Mm-hmm. So in terms of ESG, for example, from an African context, the S, it's very important to understand the S in ESG. From a global context, they focus on the environment. Africa is very committed to its environment, it protects its environment. However, we have 600 million people with no access to energy, for example. So ESG from my perspective and from the conversations I've had with decision makers, it's focusing on local content, beneficiation. How do we add value to our minerals? Africa, historically, we've been exporting our resources, yet our people on the ground are, in poverty.
Sure.
So ESG for me and sustainability is how do we unlock that value to benefit the people tangibly? And then, of course, ESG also, I was on the team that drafted the National Energy Policy for Namibia. I was in charge of oil and gas upstream and downstream and cross-cutting issues. And mainstreaming gender was one of the key aspects of that policy. How do we ensure women are participating in the sector? And participation is from ownership to, from top to bottom.
Sure.
And, in terms of management, ownership, how do we create access to finance for women in the space? So in terms of issues in the resources space, whether it is mining or it is energy, they are the same. And I think the main issue is how do we unlock value for the wider society? It's not right that we're the richest continent on earth, yet we're in the dark and people are poor.
Sure. Yeah. And how do you make sure that women are also part of that gain when that value is unlocked? And so, first of all, how many people in the mining industry in the room? Right? So a significant number who probably want to join you, post up there at the top and see what the view looks like. So you spoke about change, and I'd first like to understand a bit about your background, because we have heard from a few accountants today, trailblazing accountants, and you're one of them. And I looked at your CV on LinkedIn, and I saw that you've been around the financial services block as well as the mining block. 2018 is when you land the role at Lucara. Take us through that journey. It's 20 years. One could say that perhaps it's a reasonable climb to get to the top. Do you reckon it was reasonable? Were your male counterparts? Yeah, they had a faster ride.
Yeah, the reason I did this is because I don't update my social profile, so I hope you got it all.
Oh.
I'm one of those people. I don't do social media very well. But yes, 20 years is actually correct. And it's too long. I'll tell you why. My background as a CA, I was always told in my entire life, I was told that I'm a chartered accountant and I'll never be able to become a CEO of a mining company. So what did I do with that? I'll show you. Right? Every time I got into a career development panel, and excuse me, progressive men in this room, I'm talking about the other gentlemen out there, it was literally a boardroom of bald or gray-haired men that told me why I couldn't become a managing director of a diamond mining company in Botswana. And the reason that I wanted to become a managing director of a diamond mining company was because of the impact that I could bring into the country. It is such an amazing place to be. You make policy changes just by sitting as a managing director of a diamond mining company, because it's a national resource. That's how much power you have. And when I say power, good power, that you have to make policy changes for women, for men, and for absolutely everything in the country. And why wouldn't you want to participate in that, right? So all my life, the men told me I couldn't do it. And all my life, I told those men, I won't use the words, beep, 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 I'm going to do this.
Sure.
And I did.
Yeah, clap for her, don't be shy. Oh, man.
But before I end that, right?
Yeah.
I made a bold change in my life when I realized that this is the glass ceiling, and you don't see it. You just get frustrated. And I took a leap of faith when I moved to Lucara, Botswana, at the time Boteti Mining. And yes, I was the only female in the boardroom, as I always was. But I had progressive men in those boardrooms that I didn't have to prove myself to them who I was. I just had to bring the idea to the table.
Sure.
Whereas in all my life, I had to prove myself as an individual. And, I am, as Selma said, we're petite. So you walk in there and they're like, oh. And you're like the smallest thing in the room, right? Because you're dealing with buff men. And they look down at you. but I always looked up at them and looked down at them as well, right?
I love it. I love it.
That made sense.
So if dynamite came in small packages was a person, it would be the both of you.
We hope so.
All right. My director's telling me to wrap, only because, I mean, it has been a jam-packed program, and we've still got a few more items. But before we do go, Summer, if you can just briefly leave us with some words. I mean, we spoke about making the circle bigger in your sector. How can we do that?
Well, I think, it's important for leadership to be very intentional. You shouldn't take things for granted. If you're sitting at the table, think about the women that are behind you and the underprivileged that are behind you, and make decisions that have that impact, long-term impact. And also, just, face your fear and do it anyways.
Sure.
And surround yourself with your tribe of people. I mean, I have great, male champions who also just push me, because in terms of, imposter syndrome, many of us have that sometimes. I have champions who say, go for it. And also, in terms of the women, the older women giving us wisdom, like I love that panel.
I loved it,
before. Yeah. Dr. Helena Ndume, she's from Namibia, so shout out to her. Super inspiring. And so I think we need to be intentional and challenge the status quo and make sure that you're walking your talk.
All right, perfect. Intentional leadership, challenging the status quo, being an activist.
Yes.
And as you told us, when someone tells you that you can't, your response, I'm going to show you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.